From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee Pal Fake. And most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. This may be one of the last times we record in 2024, you guys.
Can you believe it?
Yay!
Can you believe how far we've come, how far we've fallen or risen?
I can believe it.
Depending on where you stand.
Mm-hmm. So happy New Year, folks. We are recording on, December 20th. If you are hearing this episode the day it publishes, you have made it to 2025, and we hope we have too.
Mm-hmm. I think we probably will have.
You know, knock on wood. And
can you hear that? That's real wood. That's a solid. No, it's more of a composite material.
We paid extra. So this evening we are recording in person in our studios, and we're exploring a conspiracy that is ongoing. We will not have all the answers, but as you know, whether or not you live in the United States, a young man named Luigi Mangione has been recently arrested on the suspicion of murdering a UnitedHealthcare CEO named Brian Thompson. And in the aftermath of the events, we've started to witness this narrative war, on multiple fronts. How would you guys characterize that?
Well, I mean, he's sort of been almost like elevated as this Robin Hood-esque sort of freedom fighter, friend of the people, taking out the big bads at the corporations and all that, which I think is a little bit of a misnomer, but it's interesting to see the discourse.
I would just say it has thrown into the spotlight the situation that all of us in the United States, all citizens in the United States find themselves in, where there's mandated private healthcare for profit, and it's just highlighting all of that. While at the same time, as you said, the Robin Hood thing is very real, and it is kind of overwhelming to see the reaction of most of the public coming out positively about someone being murdered.
Versus media empires. I was talking to our pal Medna Gandhi about this. Versus media empires who seem to be pushing for a very different narrative from the one the public champions. So now we have to ask, what exactly happened? We'll dive in after a word from our sponsors. Here are the facts. All right, let's start with the victim. Well, let's start with the guy who got shot. As we'll see to your earlier point, Matt, there are arguably many victims in this story. Brian Robert Thompson, he's the CEO, or was the CEO, of UnitedHealthcare. That is the insurance arm of a larger company, a parent group called UnitedHealth Group. They're very confusing, somewhat bland names. He's had this position since 2021. And as executives go, he's pretty young in the game. He's 50 years old. So by all accounts, he seems set to continue his career, despite, what we'll learn is a lot of controversy.
Yeah, but he's been at that company for 20 years, and he had run like the Medicare arm of it for quite a while. So he was very experienced in what he did. I want to just quickly put something here. This is what I didn't understand, and we've encountered this actually here, guys. UnitedHealthcare has that insurance arm you're talking about,
right?
Or the UnitedHealth Group. UnitedHealthcare, and then the other thing is the Optum.
Yes, Optum.
So that is something we've encountered specifically with prescriptions, but they do all kinds of other stuff, and I just quickly wanted to read this because I didn't know anything about them.
Sure.
If you go on their website and you go under business, it says Optum delivers care aided by technology and data, empowering people, partners, and providers with the guidance and tools they need to achieve better health. But the important thing there is technology and data.
Yeah. Yeah, leveraging data. It's something that we've talked about in years past, the idea of weaponizing personal information against a consumer, which can't really happen in a lot of state-supported healthcare programs, but can definitely happen in privatized, profit-driven programs. And this is something that Brian Thompson also comes under fire for in the events leading up to earlier this December. I think for a lot of people, when you hear the name UnitedHealth Group, you think, you kind of glaze over, you tune out, who cares? That is such a boring name, right? It's not doing anything for me. Zhuzh it up a little.
Unless you're an investor.
Right. If you're an investor, then you're also looking at their stock and you're looking at their revenue, which grows year over year. They're so big. They're a leviathan. They're extremely profitable. I would say as profitable as they are unpopular. In 2023 alone, you guys, their revenue grew $47.5 billion. That's not the total. That's how much it grew.
Well, and, that's the thing with privatizing healthcare, because then it starts to fit into that rubric of, forever growth being kind of the name of the game. And it's not like people's health needs change. So where does that growth come from?
Well, according to, we're going to get into the full numbers here, but according to their third quarter results that they reported in mid-October of this year, that growth came to the tune of 2.4 million new users or consumers that are served by UnitedHealthcare.
Because it's a product.
Yes.
Right.
And just in that third quarter of this year, in October, they had revenues of $100.8 billion, and they grew $8.5 billion. So that's a quarter of their growth for that year, for this year. Plus, if you're looking at 2023 numbers that we were just talking about, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And this would be a company that would be available to just average, maybe self-employed people who would want to get healthcare through the market?
To invest in? Or wait, you mean could somebody just on their own without a company do something like that? That's a good question. We know that a lot of their profit is driven by making deals with companies overall, sort of like how some car manufacturers make a lot of their sales through fleet vehicles, right? So they're just so huge. I think we get to the conversation of too big to fail or too big to exist. In the case of healthcare, for 2023, their revenue was $371.6 billion by any metric. They're huge. How is that even a real number?
And that's revenue.
That's just the revenue.
Based on serving people healthcare. And that's their revenue.
Denying claims.
That was the kind of what I was
and
hinting
investing premiums, right? Because every premium you don't have to pay back on is some money you can play with in investments.
Dude.
And there aren't any regulations around that? I mean, shouldn't that money be sitting in escrow or something?
Tons of regulations to protect private insurance companies.
But that's not what it's about. Going back to that earnings, the third quarter earnings of 2024, they say third quarter earnings of $6.51 per share, which includes previous cyber attack impacts that they had on the bottom line, which was a big deal for UnitedHealthcare in the recent past. But just think about what that means. A growth of $6.50 per share. So if you are just a person that is investing in the corporation and maybe you're not even using their services at all, you are making bank.
Right. As long as the system continues according to the status quo. This is where we get back to Thompson. There's something a bit cinematic, all right? And so it's early December, less than a month ago as we record, and Thompson is in New York City. It's December 4th, 2024. He's planning to attend an annual investors meeting or conference for the parent company, UnitedHealth Group. We don't know how the meeting would have gone, but we already know there was a lot of tension because, first off, there's so much money on the line. We should mention UnitedHealth Group is the world's largest healthcare company by revenue. And just overall, like if you looked at all the big companies in the world by revenue, it's in the top 10. It's the world's 9th largest company.
Period.
Ever. Yeah.
And can we let's just reiterate there what you just said, Ben. This was an investor conference. This was not a how do we make UnitedHealthcare services better. This was how do we make more money for you, investor.
This was not a public policy meeting, right? Yeah, it's nuts because the company has already faced, in step with its rise in profitability, it's faced regular strident criticism, especially the insurance arm run by Thompson. They were accused of unfairly rejecting claims. And you can read statements about this. He calls it value-based care. That's what they're getting into. It's a tricky bit of terminology there. They were also, we were talking about this off air, they were accused of using AI to wholesale reject claims.
Well, yeah, AI that was accused of being so faulty, and they were aware of its faultiness, that it was denying like between 80 and 90% of all claims. So then human beings had to go back in, which was just a way to delay the process of paying people.
Well, and the problem there, too, is so many people who do have are lucky enough to have health care through their employer, oftentimes those premiums are a decent chunk of their check. And then if you get denied a claim, the costs of fighting that or even the complications of appealing that are sometimes so daunting that you just eat it, Delay. Well, you delay your needs, unless it's some sort of absolute emergency. I'm sure that they bank on that happening.
Of course. And if it's your health, there's also very much a ticking clock. So even if you had the money to fight in court, depending on your condition, you may no longer be upon this mortal plane when the ruling goes in your favor.
Think about how adversely that affects any individual's health when they're going through a health issue like that. Then they're faced with that, as you said, daunting situation where you are now stressing out like fully because of this. You're already stressing out because you're sick and something's wrong. Now you're like, what am I going to do? What's my family going to do? My descendants, what are they going to do when I have to pay tens of thousands of dollars?
Right. What's going to be left for them as well? It goes into quality of life. To correct, or I guess clarify the AI stuff, let's go to Snopes. They have a great breakdown on this, which is not, I think, as vulnerable to the narrative war as a lot of other media places are proving to be. So there was a lawsuit against UnitedHealthcare and UnitedHealth Group that also names Navi Health, Navi Health, not related to Avatar, I think. Navi Health developed an AI tool called NHPredict, and it is true that UnitedHealth did deploy AI to evaluate claims, but we still don't know to what extent the technology informed these decisions. And I don't know if you can hear the italics in the voice there, folks, but
yes,
a lot of delay, deny.
That is a really good point, though, Ben, because everything I saw about the AI stuff was from a lawsuit. So those are like allegations, right?
We do have to say they're allegations.
So in my head, it's already kind of solidified just because I've read it so many times now at this point that there are these problems, but it is allegations. The same way everything that's been said about Luigi are allegations at this point.
He is technically a person of interest in custody.
Hey, hold up, guys. Let's take a quick pause here, have a word from our sponsor, and then jump right back into this conversation about Luigi Mangione. And we're back.
Now, you might wonder where Luigi gets into the story here. Let's set this up a little further. You see, Thompson was also a personal target for critics as a human being, civilians and institutions. He had received multiple death threats related to the denial of claims. People who maybe had a terminal condition and were threatening him because they thought he was killing them, or survivors who had lost a family member and said, if you take the life of one of my loved ones, then your life should also be forfeit. Now, we're not agreeing with this. We're just letting you know what he said. And it's also, not to sound too cold, it's not just a point made by individuals in the public, but institutions are also haranguing Thompson and this company. Maybe we go to the American Hospital Association, who back in 2021, when this guy became the CEO, they were already talking about how terrible they thought his ideas were.
Oh, and this is in relation to non-critical, that's in quotes, visits to the ER, right?
Yeah. This is where we get to value-based care. Which again is just such a the umami of that, the juicy evil of that phrase. What did the American Hospital Association say?
Patients are not medical experts and should not be expected to self-diagnose during what they believe is a medical emergency. Threatening patients with a financial penalty for making the wrong decision could have a chilling effect on seeking emergency care.
Scary stuff when you think about it.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was saying. I mean, it's just like, all of the chaos and, stress of just looking into it or even like figuring out what to do can just cause you to throw your hands up and say, you know what, I'm just not even going to deal with this now.
Mm-hmm. You have a pain in your chest.
Kick
You're
the
not
can
a
down
doctor,
the road.
right? Sometimes the pain's there. Sometimes it goes away. Should I go to a doctor? Well, I know if I go and I make the wrong bet and it's just, heartburn, then insurance might not pay for it.
Yeah. I mean, even we who have insurance have those thoughts. Plenty. Where it's like, is this something that's going to cause my premiums to go up? Should I just kind of deal with it and suffer in silence?
Can I afford to get an ambulance out here?
Oh, yeah. Or do I take the Uber?
Well, yeah, exactly. And either way, once I get there, they're taking care of me. That's in quotations as well at the hospital. And they are. The staff there is going to take care of you and do what they have to do. But who knows what care is going to go into it and how much that care is going to cost? And can you make those rational decisions or even your loved one who's there on your behalf making those decisions?
Yeah, exactly. And then, on the dark side of it, if you gamble wrong and you say, I'm not going to go to the ER, sometimes this chest pain goes away and you die.
Yeah.
Here's the way, I was trying to think of a good way to explain this. I would say if you're not familiar with privatized insurance, one way to think of it is imagine a pizza company.
Okay.
Imagine you want to buy a pizza. So in the world of privatized insurance, the business model is you go to this store, you apply to see whether or not you can buy a pizza, and then you pay them every month. And if you ever want a pizza, they will tell you what kind you can get, where you can go, and afterwards, they'll tell you how much you pay for it.
Good God.
I mean, that's how, it's pizza insurance.
They'll negotiate with how much you have to pay before they will help you start paying for it.
Yeah. You have to buy $250 worth of pizza, and then they might pay for some of it.
Maybe.
It's weird. You're paying to pay for stuff would be one of the arguments. We're trying to be fair here. There was a lot of disturbing context, this investor conference. What would have happened? We will never know because Thompson did not make it to that meeting. This is where we get to December 4th, 2024. It's early in the morning, 6:45 local time or so. He is leaving the Marriott Hotel that he's staying at. It's across the street from the New York Hilton in Midtown. This is where the meeting was going to happen.
At 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's about to happen.
Right. He's getting coffee, basically, probably taking his morning constitutional. He's walking along West 54th Street toward that Hilton. He gets shot from behind at point blank range, we would call maybe about 6 feet.
Yeah.
And there's the person who is on camera shooting him on CCTV is masked. They're wearing a hoodie. They have a backpack. They're wielding a pistol that later becomes a subject of a lot of speculation and scrutiny. He is shot in the calf and in the back. He's transported to Mount Sinai. He's transported to the local hospital, and he is pronounced dead shortly thereafter at 7:12 a.m. And I'm going to be honest. One thing that offended a lot of the public as this case continued is that there are a lot of homicides in New York, and they don't all get the same level of investigation. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, especially shooting deaths in a large city center like that. And, not just New York, any city in the world, there are homicides that occur on a very regular basis. And and it's just kind of, okay, there's an investigation. It's not a big deal. But this guy was very prominent at a very prominent thing in a very prominent city. I understand the argument of why it's bigger news, right?
Right, sure.
But it is just strange to know that all of our attention gets focused on this guy because he is, in some ways, in some very real ways, responsible for billions of dollars of money that flows through our economy.
And arguably, according to the critics, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of deaths.
Yep.
Albeit indirectly. So the authorities react quickly. There's an intensive manhunt, and we were all texting with each other, talking off air about this, following the story. Public officials on both sides of all sides of the political spectrum, they expressed condolences for Thompson, his family, and his friends. And there was a lot of initial speculation about the kind of gun used and how this guy took an e-bike, later found to be in Central Park. How did he escape? You know what I mean?
It was one of those city bikes, right? Like that you can rent, and drop off at another little hub. It's kind of crazy. I think I may have mentioned this when we were talking about this recently, but I was actually in New York when this happened,
Kind of
nearby.
in the area, right?
Yeah, I was eating at this deli, and there was this reporter kind of snooping around, and he was talking to this guy who was a security guard or like a concierge or like a baggage guy at a bellhop type guy at the Hilton. And I had no idea what was going on. I'd seen it in the elevator for our building, our offices that are right down there in that area, and I didn't even know it was in New York. I just saw the headline, and I was just really busy that day, and I was grabbing a quick bite, and I heard this reporter talking to this guy asking about, I wonder if there's anything on the security cameras. And I was like, gosh, I wonder what's going on. Maybe they're like shooting a movie here, and there was a celebrity sighting. I felt like such a dumbass when I realized this was literally happening right under my nose.
Wow.
And there were other people, when we come to find, who were nearby, who witnessed the shooting in person. The assailant, whomever they may be, we have to legally say, chose not to attack those people. This was clearly a premeditated operation specifically against Brian Thompson for one reason or another, right? Everybody initially assumed it was because of his profession, right? And the assailant, we talked about this just amid the three of us, the assailant fired 3 times with what appeared to be a suppressed 9mm, struck Thompson in the back, the right calf, but after each shot, he had to manually cycle the gun. So for the 3 shots he took, there were 3 unexploded cartridges that also popped out. And he did not hesitate when he did it. He didn't look surprised at the malfunction.
So, okay, I want to talk about this because I'm unsure of the exact details, and I don't know if we're going to get those until the court starts going
trial.
through, right? But I had a conversation with my neighbor about that, and he was talking about specific types of guns, like suppressed guns that are specifically for stealth purposes that he had encountered in the military before. And it's the kind that you have to cycle every time. It's not, it doesn't have that
automatic,
the semi-automatic functionality where it racks back. You have to like tap and rack it every time.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you guys had seen anything, if that's the type of weapon he had, or if it was a semi-automatic that was malfunctioning that he had to rack.
Because originally it was reported that the gun had jammed.
Right, which would mean, it's a malfunctioning semi-auto.
Yeah. Well, that's what it looks like on the video, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. But then we find that the cartridges that were at the crime scene may well have been intended to have been ejected and left there, to send a message.
Certainly looks like that.
To literally send a message. Deny, defend, and depose. These are the words written on the casings, and they are similar to a phrase called delay, deny, defend. And this is the way that some attorneys and public rights advocates have described privatized insurance's strategy that we just discussed, denying services and payment. It's also the title of a book published in 2010, which is a great read. It's highly critical of the insurance industry. And as we also discussed, we talked about this with each other a lot off air. That book is, again, a bestseller, correct?
It jumped up immediately. It was number 2 when we talked about this on Strange News on the Amazon nonfiction list.
And this is all happening at once. There's this wide-scale search. There's a focus of resources that honestly you don't see in a lot of other homicides. And authorities across the city, then across the region, then across the land entire are scouring every possible lead they can identify, and they're trying to find and arrest the shooter based on this footage. We also see footage emerging of him at a hostel which goes viral. We also see collections of different pieces of circumstantial evidence saying whomever this was, we think they did the following, blah, blah, blah. Still very fog of war. But they find stuff like, like a water bottle and a candy wrapper and a phone.
Yeah, there's all kinds of interesting stuff. There's several places online that give like a timeline of events where it's trying to track whoever the killer was via like what came out early. So this was, I think, the 15th or the 17th, I was seeing, especially on the 17th, seeing detailed lists of like where the suspect moved and where they encountered things and could have left stuff.
Little breadcrumbs.
Bus originating from Atlanta, but that doesn't mean the suspect hopped on in Atlanta, because buses are kind of sketchy.
Yeah?
I mean, the more you...
little bit.
Sure, but the more you kind of put these pieces together, the more it really reminds me of like John Doe in Seven, like wanting to be caught, or like the Riddler and the Batman, kind of like...
Glad you said that.
It just feels that way. And I mean, and stuff like that is also what leads to this kind of, maybe not lionization, but this glorification of this genius kind of, freedom fighter type mentality behind the way people are treating Luigi Mangione as this larger than life kind of character.
Like a folk hero, right? And that is a powerful narrative. It also is perhaps a simplistic narrative. I'm pointing at Jonathan Strickland as he walks by.
Oh, I see him. Yeah. Look at that leather jacket.
Gosh, man, what a smoke show that guy. Police said they believe they found the shooter's backpack a few days later on December 6th. And adding to this idea of, or this image of this anti-hero super character of some sort, the backpack has a Tommy Hilfiger jacket and apparently Monopoly money.
Yeah.
Again, adds to that narrative.
It's about sending a message.
Uh-oh, guys, I can hear the ads coming. Let's get to those and we'll be right back.
And we have returned. The story continues, and it just gets stranger.
You guys, there are journals that we will have to get into at some point. But again, some of it's kind of dangerous to even talk about right now because it's unknown how much it's actually connected to the case and how much of it is a human being's thoughts on something that's kind of messed up.
Right.
Like a situation that we've been describing this whole episode that is messed up, that we all are aware of is messed up, but then somebody writing about it, it's just then it appears to plot sending that message.
Right. And that's the thing, too. I think we're doing our level best to be careful with how we portray or how we frame these things, but you're absolutely right. Again, every piece here constructs a narrative or an argument for a narrative. The NYPD offers a reward. They say, look, if you give us information about this assailant that we see on camera, then you can get up to $10,000. The next day, they release those images. We mentioned this is what goes viral. 2 stills show the suspect's face without the mask, and one of them is him tossing an insouciant devil-may-care smile at a hostile assistant. Yeah.
What a good-looking fella.
And looks like Jake Gyllenhaal.
He does look like Jake Gyllenhaal, and that's another aspect of the narrative that I think is so interesting, you guys. Just what a smoke show this Luigi Mangione is. And it's almost like insulting, to be honest.
Sure.
And it really does. I mean, not to get too in the weeds about it, but a lot of this glorification, it does seem to really kind of highlight how vain and sort of surface level and kind of frivolous American pop culture sort of has become.
100%, especially with social media. I mean, to your point, Noel, I remember multiple times where some mugshot went viral. Sometimes somebody had committed a horrible crime.
Oh, yeah, the guy with all the face tattoos.
Yeah, it's
horrible rapist murderer.
And the most widely propagated social media statements are stuff like, I can fix him.
I'd hit it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it does remind me, I'll just put this out, where Monster BTK is happening. We've interviewed a couple psychologists who were related to that case.
Yeah.
One of them, Catherine Ramsland, makes a very distinct point about how the media was disappointed when the person who was BTK was revealed, because he was not a Ted Bundy-like character.
Exactly.
And people build up this thing in their mind of this...
The mystique,
Yeah.
the sexiness of it all.
That's what it is.
It's horse is what it is.
That's the other question, too, which we'll get to, which hinges on Luigi, because I would argue, and I think we're all on board with this, there is a larger context at play. Whatever side you fall on, this is in many ways a damning condemnation of current society and what we prioritize and what we think about.
Well, and also how we're feeling underneath the surface of all of that stuff.
And the conversation around the effed up healthcare system is absolutely valid.
100%.
But the bigger conversation is almost like the memification of this guy. And it's kind of become this absurdist sort of joke as opposed to a real conversation. I don't know. It just makes me kind of sad.
It's absolutely a good point. They still haven't, at this point in the timeline, they still haven't identified this guy, but the police are already deeply involved. The feds come in as well, which doesn't happen all the time. The U.S. law apparatus is just true. It has a lot of toys it can deploy in any given situation or investigation. The thing is, they don't get pulled out all the time. Candidly, not for most murders, not for a lot of violent crimes. That's why so many states, at least, have this absolute, just profane amount of sexual assault kits that are on backlog and haven't been checked for years.
Well, and not to get too political about it, but I do think there's an interesting disparity between the way Luigi Mangione is being treated versus the way school shooters are treated.
100%.
Yeah.
Mangione is being, by the powers that be, not the people, of course, couched and raised up as this terrorist, this act of absolute aggression towards our livelihoods, our system, the status quo. And yet school shootings, you forget the guy's name a week later,
right?
Because we move on, and it's apparently an unsolvable problem, and yet one CEO millionaire gets killed, and everyone's freaking out.
That's a really interesting thing, because there's been a narrative that we need to not even say the names of school shooters, right?
Right.
To not glorify any of that stuff. But then right now, every news outlet has pictures of this guy, his name everywhere, all of this stuff going on.
Yeah, and this is part of that narrative war. Members of the public take to social media very quickly, and they point out, initially, before the suspects identified, they point out the discrepancy in police activity, and they say, hey, did this one guy somehow, what makes him matter more than another innocent person who got shot? Stuff got so nasty so quickly. There appeared and still appears to be a huge difference between the overall public opinion and what the mass media wants to say. I'm thinking in particular some real, I'll say it, dickish op-eds who are arguing that Brian Thompson is the real working class hero.
Oof. Okay,
it's just not the time for that kind of take.
No, it's not. And I don't think any of us are saying, go Luigi, you're doing God's work. Because we've also talked about the death of one CEO does not change the nature of an entire industry of privatized healthcare. And it's just not going to.
But it does potentially give that gift of fear that we're talking about
Gavin DeBecker
to anyone that's on that level that is making those decisions that have a mass effect on human beings and their welfare. Right. I don't know. I'm not
chilling effects, perhaps.
Or at least a recognition that, I'm not untouchable, even though I'm making all these decisions based on profits. Maybe I just need to think more about the consequences.
Smell something in the wind.
It was my understanding that almost immediately after this took place, security details around other CEOs at that level increased significantly.
And New York, the state of New York is currently evaluating a possible call-in line just for CEOs who feel threatened. Look, we're talking about all this stuff at once, individually in groups, sometimes on our show. And on December 9th, 5 days after the murder, authorities visit a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where they arrest a 26-year-old man named Luigi Mangione. He is later charged with the murder of Thompson, along with what appears to be an increasing number of charges, both in Pennsylvania and in New York. Initially, he faced 11 charges, including one of the more interesting ones, first-degree murder with terrorist intent. Murder in the furtherance of an act of terrorism as defined by the Anti-Terrorism Act.
I can see that, though.
You can see what? Why they would throw the book at him in that way?
I can see that, yeah, because he's not trying to terrorize the public. He's trying to terrorize industry, which is a part of the public.
They're trying to Guy Fawkes him.
That's it.
He also received, we'll just give you the list, in case murder in the first degree doesn't stick, he's also charged with murder in the second degree. 2 different counts of it. Criminal possession of a weapon, a couple of different times, stalking, using a weapon equipped with a silencer. These are the facts as they stand today. We haven't even got to here's where it gets crazy, because the deeper we have been digging, and you as well, we imagine, the more strange details and rabbit holes emerge. What happened here? What's going to happen next? What does it mean for the future? These are questions we are going to answer in another episode, because we took a pause and we've been diving into some 2-parters. We hope you enjoy them as much as we do. But given that this is an emergent, ongoing event, we're going to pause and we'll come back with more details, like trying to find an unbiased jury member.
Oh, man. Ben said that when we were taking a break, and Matt and I both just exclaimed, like, oh, my God, it didn't even occur to me. And, I think taking a little, again, this is the last recording we're doing before the holidays, and I think more information will trickle out while we're taking that break that we'll all be taking in. But can I just add, you mentioned where the charges were coming from. Sure. One of the most recent stories is that he denied, waived extradition.
Right. Which means they could take him from Pennsylvania.
Back to New York. But man, your point, that perp walk shot is the hardest image of the year.
It's egregious, too.
It is. It doesn't even make sense.
It's a bigger perp walk.
Can you describe it?
Yeah, sure. It's a bigger perp walk than you would see for people like Timothy McVeigh.
Wait, I didn't even see this. I don't know what we're talking about. So, let's describe it in full, because I don't know what we're talking about.
So you can see a small army of people perp walking him from a small plane that flew into New York. And the mayor is there. The mayor of New York is there. There are multiple armed guards. There was a smaller perp walk for the Unabomber.
Wow.
Oh, and by the way, Luigi Mangione does have on Goodreads a review of the Unabomber's manifesto.
Well, and it's so stark, too, because he's wearing that bright orange Department of Corrections jumpsuit.
Got the lockup on the waist.
And the wrists.
By the water.
It is just, and there's an image in particular of like a front, shot. Yeah. And it's just like the memes write themselves. It looks like a gangster rap album cover.
Well, that's Christopher Nolan right there.
It's unbelievable.
That's a very good comparison.
That is fascinating. So guys, we didn't even talk today about the tipster and all of the blowback of the McDonald's tipster.
The McDonald's getting rating
doxing, getting review bombed. Exactly.
We have so much to get into, guys.
McDonald's, Altoona. No snitches here.
I'd also like to share, guys, just for us, a photograph that I saw in a McDonald's that also went viral after these events.
See something, say something.
Oh, no.
Ronald McDonald is the master snitch.
Yeah.
The master of whispers.
Did not age well. And I'm sure their intentions were good, but that comes up in the review bombs. We haven't gotten to the fraternity that Mangione was part of, his family.
It's going to be a great second part, but also just to add, I believe the person that was the tipster didn't call the right number. And didn't get the money.
They didn't get the reward.
Because they just called the regular old police instead of like the call-in line.
The tip line, right. And this is where we are going to leave it for now. Folks, we want to hear your thoughts, just with the facts as we've laid out. We've endeavored to be fair, not to editorialize too much, while also representing the viewpoints that we are encountering and you are encountering in the public sphere. So let us know your thoughts. We hope the end of the year finds you well. We will be back very soon. We'd love your help with part 2 or possibly part 3 of this ongoing case. In the meantime, tell us what's on your mind. We try to be easy to find online.
That's right. You can find us on the internet all over your social media platforms of choice at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. You got some hot tips for us from McDonald's in Altoona? You can communicate that with us and all of your fellow conspiracy realists right there in that group. We're also Conspiracy Stuff on X, FKA Twitter, as well as YouTube, where we have video content galore for your perusing enjoyment. On Instagram and TikTok, however, gosh, new year for TikTok, guys.
For now, TikTok.
We are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
That's right. We also have a phone number. Use your phone and mouth to reach us by calling 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, we didn't even get into privately manufactured firearms, which is a whole other topic.
Ghost guns. We have an episode on that.
Yeah. So call in with information on that. Anything you want us to talk about in the next episode, call us and let us know. When you do call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you got more to say or you've got links, get anything like that, just for any reason you want to reach us in a different way, send us a good old-fashioned email. We are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. Lay out your opinion of the narrative war. Are you one of the people who still insist that Mangione was a stitch-up job? They're out there, and we want to hear reasoning why, if you believe so. What does this tell us about society overall? Perhaps most importantly, what do you think is going to happen next? Or just give us a suggestion for a brand new episode you think your fellow conspiracy realists will enjoy. We're out here in the dark. Join us at conspiracy@iheartradio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.